All right, thank you very much for staying with us here on SABC News. Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the extent of Africa's reliance on imports as global supply chains and the flows of manufactured goods around the world have been disrupted by lockdown restrictions. African countries have faced the prospect of mass unemployment and curtailed economic growth in a way which more self-reliant developed countries have not. That's according to the African Union in its research paper titled The Impact of the Coronavirus on the African Economy. For more on this, we're now joined by Joel Jackson from the UK. He is the CEO of Kenyan-based Mobius Motors. Thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News in South Africa, Mr. Jackson.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, the African Union's research paper paints quite I'd say, bleak picture of the impact that the pandemic has had on global supply chains and movement of manufactured goods. I'd like to zoom in really and talk about the motor manufacturing industry in particular that, of course, you would know very much about. Tell us about how much this has knocked your industry in particular.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a fundamental impact on the automotive industry around the world, including in Africa, when you have social distancing measures in place. Production lines can't work in the same way, supply chains get disrupted, and you start to see, in particular, the reliance on imported goods, where that impact is felt heavily.
Now, what does the research reveal in terms of what the continent then needs to do to recover? I'm assuming that when a problem is presented, perhaps a solution or an opportunity then would be presenting itself, or what you see as opportunities and solutions that are perhaps available to you as you look at this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fundamental opportunity is to build more self-reliance in the system. So to increase localization of content, to invest in local supply chains in regions like East Africa, for example, to build more industry, but in the process create more jobs, increase skill sets, and reduce in the long term the reliance on imported content. I think this, is a two-sided coin, really. Although many parts of Africa are really feeling the effects of COVID-19 on industry, there is also an opportunity to learn from that and to grow from that and to create the foundation of an industry that can really kind of radically transform over the next decade with the right level of investment.
Now, in terms of manufacturing, I mean, this is a really terrible time in terms of people losing jobs, whether it's retrenchments, even businesses having to even shut down, really. How can industry scale up production to grow businesses and maybe then create jobs where they would have, been lost? I mean, just yesterday I was having a conversation with a gentleman who believes that it's time to do things perhaps differently now when it comes to the motor industry, maybe, sort of bringing in more electrical cars. Maybe that'll be something new that, a business opportunity that can certainly then come in. I mean, what are your thoughts around that, about what could be done?
Yeah, so I mean, I think firstly, there's an abundance of demand in the local market for vehicles that meet the needs of consumers. And at the moment, the challenge in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa is that the import of vehicles doesn't necessarily meet that demand, and import duties drive up very high prices to the consumer. So wherever there's latent demand, there's an opportunity to provide products that meet that opportunity, and that's what we're looking to do at Mobius. But beyond just the supply of products that meet a local consumer demand, really the opportunity in the long run is to do so in a way that sustains the growth of local industry, that reduces the reliance on imported content and builds more of a kind of local ecosystem. And so that, I think, is the real opportunity. I don't think it's unique to automotive per se. I think there are other opportunities on the continent as well. But I think in automotive, the opportunity is glaring just when you consider the level of imported content in that sector.
I mean, Mr. Jackson, what are the sort of the prospects of producing, let's say, vehicles that are specifically designed for the African operating conditions at a reasonable price, and also, for our terrain, for the kind of, we do like to go out on, say, rough terrain, for example. Those cars that come at a killer price, if you're looking for those kinds of vehicles, is there any sort of possibility where everything could be sort of brought in-house and maybe then bringing down the prices and making it a little bit more reasonable for the consumer and the right consumer of those vehicles?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think what we're pursuing really is very durable cars that are need specifically for that kind of usage. So rough road terrain, long distances, heavy loading profiles, this kind of thing. But what we're really focused on is ensuring the design of those products is suited to manufacturers so that the price point is controlled, both in terms of the design of the product, but also in terms of its ability to be localized and ultimately drive even lower prices on the vehicle by reducing logistics costs, for example. So I think there are lots of opportunities like that in the local market. I think there is heightened awareness in local markets of locally built content and an eagerness to support local industry. So I think now is a great time to be really doubling down on the investment of local products and local industry. And that's certainly something that we think can impact much of the African continent in the long run. So we're quite excited about that kind of opportunity.
All right, Joel Jackson, a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for giving us your time here on SABC News. That's Joel Jackson, CEO of Kenyan-based Mobius Motors, speaking to us there from the UK. All right, we're going to take a short break.